It's March 29th, 2012, and I'm here today with Edgar Steele's attorney, Wesley Hoyt. Good morning, and thanks for being here today.
Good morning.
I understand you're pressed for time, and you've got a very important legal filing coming up in this case. Could you explain that for our viewers?
Well, Edgar Steele is now in prison awaiting the filing of an appeal. But short of the appeal, he has the opportunity to file for a very unusual proceeding known as summary reversal. And the reason for that is because his attorney, a man named Robert McAllister, a rather famous trial attorney, former U.S. attorney, was indicted shortly after Mr. Steele was convicted. Shortly within a few days after he was sentenced. And it was a surprise indictment. The defense team did not know about it. The government kept it a secret. And Mr. McAllister, who had been disbarred from his home state of Colorado and who had declared bankruptcy, and all of a sudden was being indicted for very, very serious financial crimes.
So let's briefly walk through the timeline of the case. First, Cindy's told me that Larry Fairfax, who's the confidential government informant at the heart of the case against Edgar, and he's a confessed car bomber now, he'd worked as a handyman on the Steele's ranch for about 10 years prior to his involvement with the government. As a former prosecutor yourself, what do you suppose the backstory is about Fairfax allegedly going to the police to confess?
Well,
what's really going on?
What's really going on is that Mr. Fairfax had declared bankruptcy, and just prior, and I believe it was in the month of April of 2010, so just prior to Mr. Steele's arrest, and his home was in foreclosure, and the man was upside down financially, and he was looking for a way out. He had stolen $46,000, $45,000 worth of silver savings that the Steele family had at their home. He, because he was a handyman, had learned where they kept that silver, with silver coins, and he had taken it unbeknownst to them, and he was able to catch up his mortgage, but he needed a cover story. And so he went to the government and arranged this little prosecution of Edgar Steele. And
Larry Fairfax just happened to show up looking for money.
That's right. And Larry Fairfax was their key into the world of Edgar Steele.
Well, Cindy's related to me a story that in early June she was in Portland with her mom, and Edgar calls and wants to know how she left the bedroom. Where was this? Where was the teddy bear for the Russian bride investigation? And Edgar had a feeling that things had been moved around. You remember this?
Yes, indeed.
Edgar confronts Fairfax about, were you in the house? And Cindy tells me Fairfax says, yeah, I went into the house looking for tools.
He admitted that he was in the house and that he was not supposed to be there. And so he definitely was trying to get some information on Edgar, some personal information. At this point, we don't even know what it was.
If juries hear evidence presented in a case and nobody objects to the evidence, they're going to naturally assume that the evidence is genuine, yes?
That is correct.
You know, why would a jury ever think, gosh, these tapes sound funny? Well, they must be fine because the judge let them in and nobody contested them.
Well, that's exactly what the jury would think, because nobody contested them. The judge actually instructed the defense on several occasions not to present anything, ask any questions, or make any objections that would make the government look bad.
So the judge is saying that the defense can't even question the honesty and veracity of the government.
That is correct. But please understand, we used to have something called the presumption of innocence. In other words, Anybody who was accused of a crime was presumed innocent, and the government had a very high bar, and they had to put on enough evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the person was guilty. Well, now there's a presumption of governmental regularity and correctness. What that means is that the court presumes that everything that the government does is in the regular course of business, and it's normal, and it's okay, and it's correct. Under the presumption of innocence, the government should be presumed to be incorrect and irregular.
Ah!
Yes.
It's upside down, Orwellian again. It's backwards.
It's backwards. And whenever you hear a judge say, and I've heard this repeatedly, judges will say, oh, when you have a defendant and you have a member of the law enforcement, and the two have counter stories, and those are the only witnesses. You have the defendant versus the cop, for instance. The judge will say, well, I always have to believe the cop. Well, that's exactly wrong. The judge should always have to believe the defendant in that situation, because there's a presumption of innocence.
Okay, so you're talking about this, rather than a presumption of innocence, this governmental...
Presumption of governmental regularity and correctness.
Did you learn about that in law school?
No. This started in 1979. There are some cases where courts of appeals have decided that they have to give absolute credence to what the government says and does, and then you have to prove that you're innocent.
I am the proud wife of Edgar J. Steele, and I am here to tell you that this is a cover-up, a frame-up to cover up Larry Fairfax's crimes against me. My husband is innocent. We had the proof. We had all the proof, and it was the court system that would not allow our experts that know that those tapes are falsified, which I could hear, I knew, they know, but they wouldn't allow it in because of their restrictions, because they don't want to hear the truth. And it's Larry Fairfax's criminal activities to cover up his theft of the $45,000 and him attempting to murder me on his own to get rid of me so that my husband would be put away. This is not the end, because I will fight and support him. And no, I don't have Stockholm Syndrome and just believing because I love him, because that is a line that nobody would cross with me, because this is my life at stake, and I was never in any danger for my husband.